Our next panel is on data utilization. There has been a lot of discussion about how superintendents need to provide data to horsemen and the public. There has been a less discussion on how data can be provided to superintendents to help them do their job. We have two speakers. The first speaker is Jim Pendergest, Director of Racing Services at Keeneland and General Manager of the Thoroughbred Center. Jim will be sharing his ideas on the use of data from handicapping to help track changes in the racing surface.
Thank you, Dan. Good morning, everybody. I think that I was asked to be on this panel because I'm a little bit obsessed with numbers and with statistics. And I think also that when I said somewhat, Alfredo's eyes probably rolled back in his head because we collect a lot of data. We look at a lot of things at the racetrack, and one of the reasons I've been involved in training track maintenance for 34 years, and I've been involved in racetrack construction for almost 20, but I've only been involved in Keeneland's daily race day maintenance for about 5 years. So I had a steep learning curve to get up to speed when I first started. And one of the things that I wanted to know immediately when I was asked to do this is what times we could expect and what we were looking for at the race meet. So we looked at the historical times for Keeneland from 2019 or 2014 after we changed from polytrack back to dirt. We looked at the times for that period of time until 2019 and got averages on all of the races. And then we've been keeping that since then. So we have the historical data and we look at that. We look at that at each race meet as we're going through the race meet. And we compare the historical numbers and what we would expect. We run a lot of 6 furlong races and we run a lot of 1/16 races. And if you look at the numbers, you can see that we've been very consistent over that period of time. 111 almost every year. And it goes back to before I started there that it was 111. So that's what we expect to see during the race meet. And then this sheet ties into the one that we just had up. And you can see on the 6 furlong races, we track that day by day. So each race is recorded at the end of the day. It's put in this spreadsheet. And then we can look at that to see if we have any trends. So whatever the distance is, we're looking for any kind of trend. If we're getting too fast or if we're getting a little slow, then we can make adjustments with the track as we go. And then here's the numbers on the turf, which is obviously a lot more variable. We can't really control the weather, and sometimes we get a lot of rain. But we keep track of these, and we look to make sure that we're not getting too fast, or we use that as a judgment too when we may need to put some water on the track. We also look at workout times, and that's one of the things that we started early on as well. And it helped us. We look at these on a daily basis. So Alfredo and I both get a text from the clocker each morning once he finishes doing his report. And we look at that report every day to see if those times are where we want them. And we generally want to see our half-mile workouts at 49 or 49 and change. And we want to see the mile or the 5/8 workouts at a minute and change. And it's been fairly consistent for us, accepting weather. And one of the things that helped us with in 2020, when we had the Breeders' Cup, we set 6 new track records. And so we caught quite a bit of grief on social media about souping the track up for Breeders' Cup, which I know a lot of you have heard before. I know Jamie's heard it about Derby. And to my knowledge, none of us do that. We treat the track the same day after day after day, no matter what kind of race we're having. If it's Bluegrass Stakes, if it's Breeders' Cup, or if it's a Wednesday and we don't have a stakes race, it's the same every day. So when all of the social media started gabbing on about it, we were getting calls from the press, and we were able to go back to the press and show them workout times through the October race meet, through the 2 weeks leading up to Breeders' Cup. And those workout times were consistent the entire time. And the people that I talked to at that point, I told them, I don't have the capability of speeding up Keeneland's track overnight. So those times that you're seeing tell you that we didn't do anything, but we did have a convergence of some of the greatest horses in the world running. We had Gamine, who set the track record for 7 furlongs at 120 and change. And I believe she still holds the track record at Saratoga at 120 and change. And she holds the track record here at 120. Authentic won the Breeders' Cup Classic. Nick Sco won a race at 1 mile and a 16th. Those were all track records. So it was the best horses in the world, and they were supposed to set records that day. We also look at running styles. And so as each day at the end of the day, we track where the horses came from that won. And you can see from these numbers that we're not a closer's track. Although I will say that Sierra Leone did win the Bluegrass Stakes this year. So he did close that day, but we're generally not a closer's track. And we use this to kind of make sure that we're not getting anything like the old Keeneland Golden Rail. I'm sure some of you that have been around for a long time heard a lot about the Keeneland Golden Rail. And at the point before Polytrack, it was really a track where if you could get to the lead, you were pretty much going to win. So at that point, what was going on, the inside rail was a lot tighter than what we call the gallop path, where there's a lot more horses galloping each morning, and that wasn't being cut deep enough. So that got hard and fast, and we're watching out for that all the time. And Brandon's testing helps us with that. When he comes in to test before the race meet, we will generally see that we're a little bit softer at 15 feet than we are at 7 feet. And so we make adjustments to the track to account for that. And I think one of the things that helps too to alleviate the golden rail is that the equipment is much better than it was 25 years ago. I think it's made more precisely, and so you have better equipment to work with. But we make those adjustments to be sure that we're not dealing with golden rail. One of the other things we track is post positions, and when we did have that problem, you really didn't have many winners outside of the 7 post. So what we're looking for is that we get a better distribution of winners from wherever they're getting a start. And this spreadsheet probably needs a little bit of refinement. It's not based on how many starts you have out of each starting gate hall. So there's going to be less in the 10, 11, and 12. So those numbers are naturally going to be less. But we feel like we have a good distribution as we go through the race meet from where horses are going to win. We feel like it's a fair track, and they can win from any post. And then on the turf, we use going stick and a moisture comparison. So we set up this spreadsheet. We use the going stick every day. We take the moisture every day on the turf course. And then we combine this in a spreadsheet just to give us some historical data. And this goes back for several years. This is the fall race meet. And what we do is compare the percentage moisture with the reading from the going stick with the index. And the going stick actually has its own rating that it gives. We record that, but it's not necessarily true for what we see. It's more of a European rating. So then we also record what setting our rail is on, and we record what we rated the turf course in. So with the Keeneland turf course, usually we're looking at about 35% for it to be good. It's going to be firm if it's below that, but then it ties in also with the going stick numbers. So we combine those, and it gives us historical data because we're trying to give consistent information to the trainers that are going to run and to the bettors that are looking at it. So if we can be consistent about how we rate the turf course, then I think it helps them. And this is the information from the spring. And we get a higher index on the going stick in the spring than we do the fall. We got cool season grasses on our turf course, and those do much better through the winter. The root system gets longer. This has been a rough year for our turf course just because of the heat. We've had 95 degrees a lot of days. We had no rain for 6 weeks, and then we had rain for 12 days in a row. So generally in the fall, we're going to see that the roots are not as deep, and the index is going to be a little lower in the fall. So we might skew how much moisture it needs, less moisture for a firmer track in the fall. And then we use these maps, we produce those so that we get, a general idea as we're looking around the track of what our moisture looks like. Make sure that we don't have any inconsistency. You're never going to get as consistent a pattern with a turf course as you are with the dirt course. It's just not, it's not that controllable when you're using sprinkler heads. So we look at this, but if we see a spot that looks like it's stressed on here that we're not seeing by eye, we'll go put some extra water on. We also get the same map with the index for the going stick. And then a year ago, we inserted subsurface moisture meters into the track, and we get those to our phone. They're updated every 20 minutes. So it just gives us another tool as we're getting to the race meet and during the race meet to see what our moisture looks like. And we can look at this all day. We use the TDR to take the moistures right after training in the morning. So we get one look, but you get changes a lot of time. If you got a really sunny day and you've got a lot of wind, the turf course can dry out. So it's just another tool that we've installed that helps us with the turf course. And there's 45 of those around the track. There's 3 at each pole that we get the automatic readings from. We do on-track injury measurements. So if we have a horse that's taken off the track by ambulance and it's some sort of an injury as opposed to heat stroke or something like that, we go out as soon as we're able to get on the track, either after training or after racing, and we take measurements from the nearest point of the injury that we can pick. So we call that 0, and then we'll go 10 feet each direction, and we take the depth, the full depth of the track. We take the cushion depth, and we take the moisture in those spots, because you hear so many times after an injury, well, there's a hole in the track or there was a wet spot in the track. And this just assures us at the end of the day that we didn't have that on the track. But it also gives us some ammunition for when people are saying that we can produce this document and say, no, we didn't, we checked it, and this is the spot, and these are the numbers we found. This is what the track looks like at that location. So then each day during our race meet, before the races start, we post information on the website about both of our tracks. So we'll give the listing for anybody that wants to get on and look at it, whether the turf is going to be good or firm, same for the dirt. We list what maintenance we did after racing the previous day and what we're doing after training for today, and then what we're going to do after each race as we go through the day. As far as we know, obviously there's some variances depending on the weather, but we also list the information for the turf course, and people are able to see that information before they get to the races. So bettors, trainers, whomever can see how the turf course is rated. They can see where the rail is. They can see the grass height. We tell them what it is for the day. We tell them when we mowed last and at what height, and current average moisture and the going stick information. And so that's a portion of what we do. I think all of it helps us in the environment that we're in today. We have to justify our decisions. And I think having this kind of information helps us justify what we're doing with the track, how we're working it, how it's responding. And it's one of the things that, I think, given all the requirements that we have, if we have this information at our fingertips, it helps us, it helps the bettors, it helps the trainers. It's a fair amount of information to gather, but probably doesn't take as long as it looks like. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Robert.
As Jim indicated, our next speaker is Robert Hartman. He's the chair of the University of Arizona Racetrack Industry Program. Robert has held senior management positions at Santa Anita and served as the general manager of Golden Gate Fields. While at Golden Gate, Robert oversaw the construction, excuse me, and installation of the Tapeta Racing Service, which is a very successful synthetic surface in California. Robert?
Thanks, Dan. It's great to see so many Wildcats here, University of Arizona Wildcats, I should say, here in the audience. The year of putting together Tapeta, I will say it was amazing to work with Joan and Miguel from Tapeta. My philosophy at Golden Gate Fields was really management by walking around. I really believed in talking to the customers, talking with the grounds crew, really getting out there. And for this presentation, I did the same thing. I went out and talked to bettors. We had interns in California, Virginia, New York, and Kentucky. And I actually went out to see our interns. We really believe in learning by doing. And when I went out to talk to our interns, I met with bettors. I met about a dozen different bettors from those jurisdictions that probably wager easily total $25 to $50 million a year. So what I'm relaying to you is really what they told me. So 7 words, pretty easy 7 words. There's no business without a customer. Peter Drucker was a management guru. I took those 7 words and applied it to the racetrack. There's no racetrack without the bettor. We could do everything else right. You guys could put together a track surface that's impeccable. We could breed amazing horses. We could build beautiful facilities like the one we're in now. But if people aren't betting on races, it doesn't matter. HISA could be successful. It all doesn't matter if you don't have the bettor. So that we should always remember. So what did these bettors tell me? I wrapped it up into 3 different items. 1, they want races with competitive fields that offer value. When I asked what that meant, they meant 8 or more horses in a race and no prohibitive favorites. That's what they want. Number 2, and this is where you guys come in, accurate information to make wagering decisions. So what does that mean? That means past performances that are accurate. Don't get these guys started on run-ups because they'll talk your ear off. They don't believe, they think run-ups are a major flaw in the way we put on races, but they also want accurate track surface data. And they don't really feel like they're getting it fully. So, and some of that I'm going to get into maybe the reasons why. The third thing they want is a level playing field. They feel like some bettors have special access as compared to other bettors. So one example you guys may be familiar with is these late minute manipulation of pools where odds go from 5 to 1 to 9 to 5. So that's an issue for them. And when I was at NYRA, I worked at NYRA for 3 years. One of our biggest bettors had somebody employed to stand by the paddock to look at what shoes horses were wearing because they weren't reported at the time. And this is the time horses, as I'm sure folks in here know, they were wearing turn downs, different types of shoes to give them more traction on the track. NYRA had not yet been reporting that information. And our biggest bettor would had somebody hired on his payroll to go down and look at shoe changes because he was the only one that essentially would know that other than the trainer. So NYRA quickly, it took us about a year, caught on that information was important to bettors. We started reporting those shoe changes at the time, but that's what we talk about with a fair playing field. They want everybody to have the same information. Accuracy. Accuracy is really important. They want to make sure that the data that they have is real. And that could be difficult with track surfaces. A lot of it, at least at my time in Golden Gate, was based on our judgment. We try to use common sense. Our track superintendent was amazing, Juan Mesa. We had Cal Rainey. We had a strong team, but there was some judgment involved. It's a lot of art. Some science, but a lot of art in this thing, and there's nothing wrong with that. The art the time that you guys spend on the track and the feel and the knowledge that you have to make these decisions is incredible. I really relied on my team to make those decisions and trusted them because they learn by doing. Somebody like Juan worked his way up from a truck operator to being our track super. So that art is important, but the science is important as well. And I'll get to that here in a moment. But what the bettors told me is bad data leads to a lack of confidence. And they said that's the worst thing that could happen to a racetrack. If they start feeling less confident in the product, that will cause them to shift their dollars elsewhere. So as I just mentioned, there's kind of what I call the track condition continuum. And a good deal of it is based on judgment, but it feels like with Mick and Mackenzie and the team, we're trying to move that more towards science. And there's a continuum there. It's not all science. It's not all judgment. It's a lot of common sense, right? It's a lot of common sense. So we have to use our judgment. And as we continue to learn more about the science, hopefully we'll have more accurate data to provide these bettors, which is really what they crave. One thing that some of the bettors talk to me about, and some of y'all may be familiar with this, time form in their past performance data for US racetracks takes a combination of the track condition that's listed. So that could be on the turf course soft or good or firm. And they also add a number to it. So I haven't seen this for any US racetracks, and this is in the past performances. They don't do this on the day of races. They do some analysis after a racing card and add a number after the surface. So if we believe that the track is yielding, let's say, and it's listed as a yielding track, time form then adds a number between 1 and 10 based on the times of the races, the wind direction, the number of turns. They have a whole list of factors that they do some analysis post race. So when the horse races next time in the past performances, you could get a yielding 7, right? We would think a yielding turf course would produce less fast numbers, but on that particular yielding turf course, they gave it a number of a 7. So you'll see a track condition plus a number. So it was a little bit faster and firmer than maybe the track condition was listed as. Same thing on the dirt track. If it's a muddy track or a sloppy track where you think it may be a little bit slower, they put a number of 7 to 10 after that. So you could essentially have a sloppy 1 or a sloppy 8. Right? They have that designation based on the times after. So they're trying to introduce another metric into our system to give a little bit more information. And the bettors I talked to thought this was a step in the right direction. They understand it's not perfection. There are judgments. There are different moisture measurements. There's shadows. They understand, shade. They understand the racetrack surface. It's not perfect. And they believe that the track supers were doing an amazing job in reporting what they believed in their best judgment. But sometimes the track plays a little bit different even throughout the day, right? As tracks are drying out, they'll play differently. So this was a positive in their opinion, was this extra number. And we're hoping that maybe racetracks can give in time a little bit more information other than that track surface information. As Jim just pointed out, and Keeneland does this currently, I'm sure others do as well, but basic maintenance information. They thought this was important as well. How much water you put on the track? Did you seal the track? The harrow depth? Any basic information there can be at the start of the day, they all thought would be powerful. The one thing they told me about the Tapeta surface that we had at Golden Gate is it was always fast and always consistent. We were blessed with the one thing in Northern California, which was consistent weather. So we didn't have to worry about those, Topeka, in extreme hot weather, extreme cold weather could change a little bit. We were typically always in the 60s, 70s, 80s at Golden Gate, so we never had to worry about that. But they really appreciated. They may not have been a synthetic surface fan, they might have been a dirt fan, but one thing they appreciated about the synthetic surface was the consistency. So track consistency is important, not having variation. So in conclusion, I think that and Mick didn't pay me to say this, but everything's going in the right direction. We're trying to get more science. We're trying to get more information, and the bettors crave that. They crave that accurate information that can be provided through science. They understand the art is never going to be lost, and they don't want it to be lost. They again speak very highly of track supers. It wasn't a bashing session, which sometimes when you talk to customers, it could be tough. At Santa Anita, we had like a weekly customer forum, and after like 2 months, I said, I don't want to go to that thing anymore because all they did was complain, right? These guys were not complainers. They were trying to figure out ways that everybody can gain from accurate track information. So we put on our global symposium of racing every December. Mick's been great about coming out and having some track surface conversation. We've done it, I think, for the last 2 or 3 years. So I invite you all to come out to Tucson, where the weather's 100 today, but in December it'll be a nice 75 degrees. So come out to Tucson, December 9th through 11th. I also put my cell phone number up there if anybody has any questions. But thank you very much for listening and your time. And Jim and I are going to stay up here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Jim, can you just describe what staff you have to take all the different measurements on your track and how you coordinate it?
I'm sorry, Sean, I couldn't hear the question.
If you can describe what staff or which staff take the measurements on the track each day, and how you utilize how much time it takes for that.
Sure. Our turf foreman does most of the measurements. So he'll take the TDR and he'll get the measurements on the dirt course and the turf course after training. And then he uses a going stick, and we try to keep the going stick in one person's hands because it's, you need to do it the same way. Different people will use it in different ways, and so you can get readings that aren't consistent. So we try to keep that part of it consistent. We have 2 or 3 other people on staff, just general track operators that can do the dirt measurements. We do depth measurements on the dirt, and so we have different people that do that, and they measure the polytrack training track. And then we have a technical person that does what we call it, the quick sheet. It's a lot of the information that I put up. So sometimes I help with that. At night, I'll look at the past performances for the day. I'll look at the charts and pick out some of that information, the times and the running styles, and give it to that person to put into the spreadsheet the next morning. And then that spreadsheet goes out to a group of management there at the track.